Welcome to Broadband Action, a podcast presented by the Community Broadband Action Network. I'm Curtis Dean. We are off to a really strong start in 2025. We hope your new year is beginning as well and off to a strong start. One of the things we've been really deeply working on is our upcoming CBAN IAMU Spring Summit. The 2025 edition in Ames, Iowa, April 22nd and 23rd. We're going to be talking a lot more about the Spring Summit in the upcoming weeks here on Broadband Action and all the other channels that we have to communicate with CBAN members and supporters. Right now, though, I wanted to take a minute to really thank our showcase sponsor for the Broadband, the Spring Summit, and also a sustaining CBAN broadband backer, Power & Tel. Folks at Power & Tel have been behind CBAN from the very, very beginning. And I've known a lot of the people in the Power & Tel family for many, many years. They do a tremendous job as a seller of products and services that you definitely need if you're operating a broadband network. They have one of the biggest channels as far as manufacturers of any of the distributors out there, maybe the biggest. And you know, what really makes a difference for Power & Tel is even though some of the stuff that they sell is sold by other distributors, their real strength is the relationships that they build. And they've built those relationships strong over many, many years. And that's why their customers, broadband providers, keep coming back to Power & Tel when they need solutions. And when they need them, their solutions filled as quickly as possible. They're doing a great job getting ready for the BEAD rush, so to speak, which we think may or may not be coming any day. And so Power & Tel is doing a great job of having inventory in stock for whatever operators are going to need to build new networks, whether it be fiber optic cables, pedestals, all of that stuff. I was just at their tech summit last week in central Iowa, and it was a great time. I wish I could have stayed more. Unfortunately, life got in my way. But, you know, they did a great job showing some of their various and sundry manufacturers that they represent. So the folks at Power & Tel are, as I mentioned, a Spring Summit showcase sponsor. So you can come to our Spring Summit and you'll be able to visit with them. They'll have an entire room on the second day of the summit, just about all of their great products and services. And as I mentioned, they're also a sustaining sponsor of CBAN. We really greatly appreciate all the support that they've given us over the years and continue to give us the support moving forward. So thanks to the folks at Power & Tel, ptsupply.com, that's their website, and they'll get you hooked up with whatever you need. Joining us on the podcast today is Alan Fitzpatrick, and Alan is with Open Broadband. Open Broadband is a CBAN provider member in the southeastern part of the United States. And today we're going to be talking about using an all-of-the-above approach to broadband connectivity. Alan, when I came up with this topic for the podcast, you were the first person I thought of because since you guys have joined as CBAN members, I've followed you on LinkedIn, and I'm always fascinated about some of the great things you're able to accomplish, and you're thinking outside the box to get people connected in the Southeast. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me. We define ourselves as being an internet service provider with the emphasis on that middle initial S,
Yes.
Service. So as we talk today, we'll talk more about providing a good service to the user as opposed to technology itself.
Well, that's why you're an ideal fit for CBAN membership, because we want to work with companies that have a real strong focus on the customer, focus on the communities they serve. And let's talk a little bit about that, kind of lay the land for us, Alan, where Open Broadband is and where you provide services.
Sure. So we are based just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, in a little town called Waxhaw. So we certainly understand the small rural town environment. We operate in North and South Carolina and Southern Virginia.
Okay.
We started off providing really a fixed wireless solution that was a sort of a quick go-to-market, get people connected, solve the problem of connectivity. Mm-hmm. And then over time, we have done fiber to the home, and we've done some cellular 5G, and we're working now doing some Starlink installations and trying the all of the above approach to how do we best connect people.
Great. Let's talk about that. I want to talk about that philosophy because there are plenty of providers out there They're like, oh, I'm a cable guy, or oh, I'm a fiber guy, or whatever. You've been very good about flexing the technology to meet the need. In other words, focusing on getting the person connected and less about the technology. So talk about how that you arrived at that philosophy.
Sure. I think part of it is my background and my co-founder's background is engineering related
Mhm.
and entrepreneurship. So two areas where entrepreneurs and engineers kind of dovetail is they start off focusing on a problem. So an
Yeah,
engineer's job is to solve a problem, and they look at the available solutions, find the one that's most cost effective, that's going to do the best job and have the best longevity, all the different engineering parameters. And same thing for an entrepreneur. If you're going to provide a solution for your startup business, you're going to have to solve a problem for somebody. And how do you create that solution? The customer doesn't really necessarily care if you think you've got the greatest widget in the back of your toolbox. They just want their problem solved. So we kind of came at it from that philosophy of let's find out what the right solution is for the customer. Uh, not everybody, as you pointed out, not everybody feels that way. And sometimes we run
sure.
into situations where people are adamant about a particular technology or two. And it's like, okay, we'll try to make that work. But if we just have our druthers, we're going to look at cost and affordability to the customer,
Mhm.
longevity and reliability, and all the parameters and come up with what we think is the best offering.
That's a really good thing to focus on, right? You're focusing on the person that is going to be buying the service from you. And if you can't provide an affordable service because the technology is too expensive, then you've done no one any good. So,
Right. I've got an interesting little side story about this.
yeah.
Uh, I was talking to a customer about 2 weeks ago. They had a service issue and it was over the weekend, and I'm always checking, kind of see what's going on. So I ended up calling the customer, saying, hey, let me see if I can help you out here. And it was just a minor issue, and we got them restored. And I said, oh, can you just test your internet connection, make sure you're back up? And they go, wait a minute, let me turn on my TV. Okay, yep, it's up. Internet's good. Thank you very much. And it dawned on me afterwards, it's like they didn't plug in a laptop and run a speed test. They
Nope.
didn't even use a tablet or a phone. They turned on their TV to see if the streaming was there. Now, some customers have a greater need for bandwidth than others, but
Sure.
it dawned on me how many people where the real need is just to make sure that that streaming TV is working all the time.
Yeah.
So reliability and always on was the issue for them. That was the problem that they needed solved, and affordability was probably number two. It can't be too
Sure.
expensive. Speed, it didn't matter if it was 100 meg or 1 gig or 8 gig, right? Their TV streamed or didn't stream. That was the issue.
Right. Right. That's an increasingly vital use case for people as cord cutting has happened and continues to accelerate. Uh, my household is a great example of that, just like that. My wife just finally got up and around on her snow day. She didn't have to go to work today, so I know right now that the streaming will begin. And so I know I've got a great connection from my fiber, who's also a broadband provider and member of CBAN. So I know I'm going to be fine. But if I had a lesser connection, I might be going, oh, here I am trying to record a podcast and she's on the Today Show. So, but I don't have to worry about that. But you're exactly right. Many consumers, their interface to the internet is the television, not the laptop, the cell phone, or the tablet. So.
Yeah, I learned over time because we would ask customers, can
Mhm.
you take an Ethernet cable and plug into the back of the router, do some testing, what you and I might normally do. And they're
Yeah.
like, we don't have a
Yeah.
computer.
Yeah.
You don't have a computer. What do you mean? What do you use? Right. And some of them are like, oh, I have a tablet. Okay. And you're using Wi Fi. Okay. You have a phone, you're using Wi Fi. You got a TV, you're Wi Fi. So you don't have a computer at all,
Yeah.
which kind of
We,
surprised me. But that
I'll
was the
tell you, Alan, we are part of a national cohort of a total of 18 entities across the nation that are doing a digital navigator pilot program. And we are finding it with our boots on the ground in very rural parts of Iowa that it is not at all uncommon that no one in that home has a computer, much less a device. They probably have a cell phone and a TV, and sometimes they have an old laptop, like the compact laptop that we took in from somebody during an event that we held in conjunction with one of our members, where we actually got people set up with new devices. And this guy brought in a compact that I swear could have been used as an effective boat anchor. Still trying to milk it along, right? But it was like way outdated and would barely boot up. So, but you're exactly right. There's so many people that a computer is not part of their daily lives, but the cell phone is and the TV is. So, let's talk a little bit about, I'm not going to talk as much about fiber. I know you do fiber to the home, but we spend a lot of time in this podcast talking about fiber. So I want to give the fixed wireless connectivity a little bit of spotlight here today, because you guys are using not just multiple different types of technology to fiber, fixed wireless, Starlink, but you're using different types of fixed wireless technology within that range. So talk about, how that's evolved over time, and why, what some of the new technology that's out there and how that's coming to light.
Sure. And you said the right word, evolving. So sometimes people have a notion in their mind of what fixed wireless is, and they think back 10, 15 years ago, and it doesn't go through trees, and it's really slow, and it has lots of interference. And are trees still an issue? Of course they are, to various degrees. And is interference something you have to be worried about and you have to manage? Absolutely. However, the tools have just gotten so much better.
Mm-hmm.
When we first started, we were using fixed wireless from like Cambium and Ubiquity, and
Yep.
using the 5 gigahertz open Wi-Fi, and getting 25, 50 meg service primarily to residents, which, believe it or not, was superior to what the other options they had, because they were on Usenet, DSL, and so it was a much better product. But over time, we started going down the CBRS path.
Mm-hmm.
And we've used a couple of different pieces of equipment, and the one we kind of like the best is, I'll give a plug for Tirana.
That's fine.
They've got amazing, interference cancellation and a signal improvement. It's just amazing, the technology that they put together. To be honest, we didn't quite believe all the hype, a few years ago, until we tried it, and it was like, damn, this works. And it'll go through a modest amount of trees, which we have a lot of in the Carolinas and in Virginia. It's one of the problems with fixed wireless in the Carolinas has been the dense tree coverage.
Yeah.
But and Tirana can get a couple hundred meg, 300, 400 megabit per second speed, which isn't fiber, but for most people that's perfectly adequate.
Yeah.
And then the ability to share that spectrum is so key. And I'm always following along with what all the big carriers are saying about shared spectrum, what the FCC do. Being able to tap into that spectrum as a small provider is so important. Yeah, it allows us to solve that connectivity problem for a user at a relatively affordable price. We don't have to buy up all this spectrum like the big guys do.
Yep, that's a really good point. And spectrum is a big national issue, has always been, but I think you're seeing an even more focus on it now with the new administration. I just saw some stories about some real strong pushes to open up more spectrum, to take some spectrum that maybe some government entities have been squirreling away and keeping it out of the hands of the market, and letting that be used so that people like you can do more and better things with the spectrum that's out there. We can't make new spectrum, unfortunately. We can utilize areas that we couldn't before, like Tirana has done with some of the really high frequency bandwidth, but we can't make physics. We can't just do it. So so you did mention Tirana, and I've been kind of geeking out over them here for the past couple of years. I go to trade shows and I see them and I see their demos. I just saw one last week. And I'm hoping that we can get them to come to our spring broadband summit here in Iowa. Have you found that is that kind of your go-to solution now, or are you still saying, we can do this well with Cambium because this customer doesn't want 200 meg, they want 50 meg, or we can do this with ubiquity because this customer wants this level of service. So again, are you dictating it by what the customer needs and less about what you want to do?
Correct. Yeah, we do fall back on to use the best tool for the application.
Sure,
And
sure.
and sometimes we put up a little hub. So we may go on a grain elevator or a grain bin,
Right.
connect that to the tower, and then distribute the signal to 3 or 4 local residents. And you'll see WISP do that all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when
Yeah.
you're putting something like that together, generally you don't need the bandwidth of a Trana, and you don't need the expense of a Trana. So you can fall back to the CAN beam and ubiquity and it works just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you connecting your hubs, as you mentioned, your radios? Are they connected mostly by fiber, or are you doing a combination of fiber and microwave relay?
Combination. So
Okay.
we like to have at least 2 fiber circuits where we can, so we have some redundancy, and then we sort of
Sure.
backhaul between them with the wireless. So we'll use licensed wireless links for our tower to tower, like 11
Yep.
gigahertz is sort of our go-to. Where we can, we'll do 60 gigahertz because you get really high bandwidth. I mean, you can deliver gigabit speed on fixed wireless if the situation is right. You got to have the right distance and no trees in the way.
Circumstances have to allow. Exactly. Yeah.
So we try to use it where we can.
Let's talk a little bit about your, you've been connecting or getting people set up with Starlink as well. Now, talk about that relationship. You're not really a Starlink reseller. You're just a problem solver again, right?
Very well put. So when Starlink came out, we were probably as skeptical as some other people. How well is this going to work? And are you going to lose your signal? And what the speed's going to be? And all those same questions. Well, over time, we kind of all learned that the service is pretty good, and it's actually getting better. As a company, we had to decide: are we going to try to compete with Starlink? And are we going to compete with Verizon and AT&T and T-Mobile on their fixed wireless products?
Right. Right.
It's pretty daunting for a small company like us to go head to head against those guys, right? We don't have the marketing funds and so forth to do that. And after a little while of sort of wringing our hands, how do we compete with this? We said, why are we competing? Why don't we just utilize their solution as part of our solution? If somebody wants a Starlink at their house and we can't do fixed wireless or we can't do cellular, why don't we help them anyway? Why don't we install their Starlink dish for them? Every day our technicians are going up on roofs and mounting antennas and running cables through the attic into the crawl space and into the house and setting up Wi-Fi. We do that all day long. Well, Starlink doesn't offer an installation service.
That's right. You buy it at Best Buy, take it home and figure it out.
Right. Self-install kit. Well, self-install sounds good until you look at it, 2-story house and you're trying to get on the ladder and do all of that.
As available.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish your point.
So we started off as really just sort of, being an installation service, because again, we were focused on the end user. How can we help the end user get connected? They already decided they were going to go Starlink. Well, after we started doing this, we said, wait a minute, there's a business application for Starlink as well. Businesses that need, uptime, disaster recovery capabilities if their fiber gets cut. And we ran into a business where they had us install 2 Starlink dishes, and they had 2 different fiber providers. We're like, why would you want Starlink if you already have 2 fiber providers? And they're like, we're not going to take any chance of being down. If there's a common point that knocks down both fiber providers, we still want to be up. If you guys can come in and set up our Starlink for us, we would really appreciate that. And they paid us. So we see more applications for businesses that want that redundancy. They want that failover. They want that peace of mind, which is really what they're buying. But they don't want their manufacturing facility to be down. They don't want their office to be down for any reason. If they're down for an hour, they're losing, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Burning cash at that point. Yeah.
Right. So we kind of looked at it and I'm sorry, this is a long answer to your question.
Oh, no, please.
We just kind of looked at it like, well, Starlink is a very useful tool and people will want it for certain situations. Instead of trying to fight it and view it as a competitor, why don't we just kind of work with it and see if we can utilize that as part of our offering to help the end user.
And I'm assuming at some point in the future when Amazon can ever get their platform, Kuiper, up and running, you'd probably look at them too, if because customers are looking for connectivity. And
Absolutely.
maybe that redundancy, you could have your fiber connection, two different satellite providers on two different satellites at two different orbits. Now you're really building some redundancy, and that's just a great use case. Now, I
No,
was going to say, fortunately, you never have natural disasters in Carolina, so you don't need to have disaster.
well, a hurricane came through last fall. Right?
I know. I wanted to ask you about that. What were the impacts of the hurricane on your facilities, your customers? I know it was a painful few weeks out there.
So the infrastructure damage to the roads and the towns, the water damage and
Yeah.
power outages were kind of the big thing. Well, when you have buried fiber or even aerial fiber and a hurricane comes through, fiber strands get cut, roads
Yeah.
get washed out. Even if it's buried, you think, oh, you're protected from the hurricane. Well, the whole
Yeah.
road washes out.
Exactly.
Your fiber's gone too. And power is gone. So we have mainly fixed wireless in the mountains of North Carolina. And one could say, oh, fixed wireless, you're fine. The tower is still standing and everything is good. And our antennas were intact. We didn't have power. Now, fortunately, we have generators, but our fiber circuits, which do our backhaul, were down. So
Yeah.
we had to wait for power to be restored to customers' homes because the customer didn't have power at their home, so they couldn't plug in their devices. Their Wi-Fi router didn't work. So we ran into those issues for several weeks. We deployed some temporary solar systems.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
had to do some emergency tower climbs. We worked with the power company and our fiber providers. Fortunately, we had one of our fiber providers never went down in
Oh,
Western North Carolina.
wow.
It was amazing. They did
Yeah,
such
that's a bonus.
right.
Well, you have hurricanes out there. We have derechos in Iowa, and we've got one of our provider members here in Iowa that suffered extreme damage from the derecho straight line winds that went through here a couple of years ago. And talking with one of their technicians once, people were calling and saying, well, our internet is down. Yeah, we know that, but your power is down too. And until the power is restored, there's no reason for us to be there, because we're on a pole and the power company has to replace the pole before we can do anything for you. So, but people don't always make that connection. Oh, the internet is not working. Yeah, but it does you no good when there's no power. So, but that just shows you how insular and ingrained, I should say, broadband is to people in their lives today, that it's seen as a necessity, just like electricity, just like water, et cetera.
You're right. They may have been more concerned about loss of internet than loss of power.
Yeah. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
some
Well,
ways.
I can always, I can always run things off of a battery backup, a little anchor box or whatever, but that doesn't do you any good if you can't run your router off of it, and if the provider themselves are out. So, let's talk about, we're talking about evolution here. Are there any other technologies on the horizon that you see could really play a role in your improved ability to provide even better broadband to more people?
6 gigahertz was another of the fixed wireless spectrums that has recently been opened up. And you can do up to gigabit speed with 6 gigahertz as well. And it's less
Yeah.
congested currently than the
Right. Yeah.
5 gigahertz band. Eventually, it's free to use. So eventually it is going to get congested. But right now, that's a really nice frequency addition. We're interested in following along with the CBRS power requirements. And if the
Mm,
FCC is going to allow a little bit more juice on the CBRS connections, which help us push through more trees and
right.
expand coverage from the towers. We are the 60 gigahertz I mentioned earlier, and 70, 80 gigahertz are sort of the high end. It limits your distance, but you get really high throughput.
Yep.
I wish there were more use cases where that was like a slam dunk.
Right.
Unfortunately, it just tends to be here and there. We can kind of use that solution. Recently, we've been doing more with 5G cellular.
Okay.
So as T-Mobile and AT&T and Verizon have improved their 5G services, that's becoming more and more of an option for people. And if you look at some of the data, most of the new additions for home internet have actually been fixed wireless from
Yeah.
those guys.
It's become an amazing growth market, and landline providers are starting to feel the pinch from that, because you can get a little router box, and if you're able to get 500 meg from that, at a significant cost savings, again, you care less as a consumer about the technology. You care about the end result of the technology and what it gives you. And if it's giving you everything you need and you're saving 20 for 30 bucks a month, I think that's going to put a lot of pricing pressure on bigger companies, that are traditional monopolies. And now they're seeing not only landline competitors in many markets, but they're seeing these 5G competitors that are taking, customers away on a daily basis. So there could be some really tight quarterly reports for some of the big companies in the future. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And we looked at this the same way we looked at Starlink.
Yeah.
At first we were just kind of worried, and they're a competitor and so forth. And finally, it just became, if we can't serve a customer with fixed wireless, how else can we serve them?
Mm-hmm.
Could we install their Starlink for them? Could we help them with their 5G? So we started experimenting with different 5G routers. We bought directly from the manufacturer. Then let's start getting our own SIM cards, and let's see what we could offer. So now,
Sure.
If somebody is not available on fixed wireless and they don't want Starlink, we'll pitch them the 5G service if they're within the 5G coverage area. So again, rather than try to fight the larger provider, why don't we just sort of bundle that in with the solution? And I guess you could say, well, okay, Open Broadband, you're turning into an MSP instead of an ISP. You're starting to basically just provide that managed solution provider as opposed to being the internet provider. But it's like, I don't really care how you classify us as long as we solve that problem.
Yeah. Call us a SSP, a solution service provider. I think I think that's why your future is bright at Open Broadband, as you guys continue to, you're still expanding into new markets. Is that correct?
We are. So it's a combination of sort of area and technology with our Starlink or a cellular offering. And we do a lot of just Wi-Fi, like Wi-Fi zones in small towns. We'll set up like a downtown Wi-Fi free, you just go downtown and use it. Parks. And we get paid for this, by the way. Counties and towns will want to pay for free Wi-Fi access in the parks. And we learned that it's not just the Wi-Fi service that's important to them, but it's the data behind it. How many people are using it? Is it the same person every day? Is it a different person? What device are they using? How long are they on it? Do you want to have the free Wi-Fi on when the park is closed? No, you want to have time of day restrictions.
Yeah.
So all of that became important. And we did find a vendor that had all the software for that we ended up using. And that just has made all the difference. Now, that's another product we offer to municipalities and to counties is how to expand, free public access to the internet. We can do parks and downtowns and venues. We can do it on a temporary basis. We can pop it up for a festival and then turn it back down. And since it's public Wi-Fi, everybody's device works. You don't have to buy a SIM card. You just use your phone, use the tablet, whatever you have. And
whatever device you have, as long as it's got Wi-Fi built in, which is basically everything in the modern world, then you can get online. Well, hey, Alan, I think we could talk all day. I'm going to let you go, though, because I want you to be able to get back out there and maybe climb on a roof or two yet today, if it's on your agenda anyway. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us what you're doing at Open Broadband and taking the very creative solution-oriented approach to getting people broadband. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Curtis. I really appreciate it. And I love what CBAN is doing, and to keep up the good work.
Excellent. Spread the word for us, would you?
Well,
I need an excuse to come out to the Carolinas. So let's get us a few of our CBAN members in the Carolinas together and have a party and learn some things, share some information.
Sounds good.
All right. And before we go, I just want to extend a big thank you again to today's sponsor and our CBAN broadband backer and our Spring Summit Showcase sponsor, Power Intel. Folks at Power Intel are doing great things in this industry. The relationships they've built have been so powerful and strong. And so hats off to everybody at the team. You know, some of my best friends in the industry are at Power Intel, Mike Brems, Michael McCabe, and the list goes on and on. So thank you very much to Power Intel for being a Spring Summit Showcase sponsor and a CBAN broadband backer this year. And again, thanks once again to our guest today, Alan Fitzpatrick with Open Broadband. This has been Broadband Action. We'll see you all next time.